Hi, good evening. We are live. I am Melvin Thomas, the lead for the 2017 Stonewall Dodgeball Tournament. And first and foremost, I want to welcome all players, captains, and friends who will be joining us in Washington, D.C. in 3 short days for the tournament for our 4th annual Stonewall Sports Tournament. This will be the 3rd year that Dodgeball will be part of the Stonewall Sports Tournament. And as part of our communications efforts, we're going to be hosting a live conversation or chat about the rules today. Those that are joining me live today, feel free at any point to ask questions in the chat, and I'll be able to answer those questions at periodic sessions throughout today's presentation. That being said, what we want to do is provide a fairly informative and interactive session. Please note that this session is being recorded so that those that are not with us live will be able to hear this recording later. Welcome to my office. I'm still actually at work because we have a lot of things to do. But that being said, we're going to do this rules clinic, and I'm going to share with you several things that are on my screen for you to reference throughout the course of the next few days. And we actually have Joe joining us as well in this chat. Joe, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Hello.
All right, Joe is here. Perfect. All right. I also realized I still have my music playing, so we're going to end that. I'm going to share my screen real quick. Here we go. Share. All right. So where I do want to point out is this year Dodgeball has a new gym. That gym is actually at Georgetown University's Law Center. The Georgetown University Law Center is located at 600 New Jersey Avenue Northwest in Washington, D.C. This is actually 4 or 5 short blocks from the Union Station Metro, which is on the Red Line. The Red Line is great for us here in DC because it's also the same line that the hotel, the host hotel, the Embassy Row Hotel, is located on. The Embassy Row Hotel is located on Union Station. So those that are staying at that hotel can easily jump on the Red Line and find their way over to Union Station and walk a few short blocks to our tournament. Please note that our tournament officials have notified us that there will be 2 shuttles available that will be taking loops to and from all locations. They're specifically scheduled in the morning of Saturday at 8:30 a.m. and 9 a.m. to bring players directly to Georgetown Law's Sports Center for us to kick off the tournament. Here are some quick pictures of the actual facilities to give folks a preview of kind of what the courts look like. That's not a great one. But long story short, you'll notice here that there are 2 very large gymnasiums that we will be cutting into half, and then we'll take each one of those large basketball courts and cut them into another half in order to establish 4 courts. Feel free to check out the facility using their website under facilities and pictures. I also want to show everyone that we actually have a shared version of the rules that players can access at any point. These rules have been provided to all players via email. If you haven't received any emails with a link to the rules, please reach out to your captain. They'll be able to provide you those rules as well. All rules are currently set for the most part. There will be some exceptions that we may do on site after we set up courts, depending upon the size of each court. I'll highlight those rules later in the presentation. We also want to share that the schedule is available online for all players. Players should have received the link tonight to the full schedule. We encourage players to look over the full schedule to be able to determine when their very first game is. When you look at the schedule, feel free to hit Control F and type in your team name to highlight when your team is going to be playing as well as reffing. We're going to be covering your ref responsibilities later in the presentation as well. But this will give you an idea of what our timeline is. You'll notice that the timeline is pretty tight. Each game will be about 20 minutes long, and there'll be less than a 2-minute transition for players to get between courts. Games will start pretty immediately after players find their way onto the new court and refs are in place. We'll also have a live countdown so that folks understand when we should be starting and when we should be wrapping up games. We also have a dedicated lunch break for all players. What this lunch break signifies is the end of your actual pool play. What that means is you'll actually play within groups of 4 or 5 And then in the afternoon, you'll actually play a team that's outside of your pool. We'll actually explain the dynamics of that later in the presentation as well. And then right after, we actually have scheduled 2 different buses to come and pick us up and take us to the dodgeball only bar crawl that will start between 3:30 and 4:30 p.m. at Nelly Sports Bar. Without further ado, I want to go right into today's rules. And we're going to do a high-level overview of the rules themselves so you can get the basics of what we're trying to display here, and then we can ask questions as they come up in the chat. Joe, if I could ask you to just quickly monitor the chat while I go through these things, that would be very helpful. And if you can't monitor the chat, which I realize you probably can't, I will go ahead and pull that chat screen up too. All right. Cool. So let's go over matches in general. So the basics of dodgeball is really to hit an opponent with the ball and get them out. If they catch it, you're out. And if they get a player back into the court from their team. The team wins the game when no players remain on the opponent's court. So it's a pretty simple game that we've all played from the very beginning. What makes our rules a little bit different is that each one of our cities might be playing by separate or slightly different rules, and some of our teams that are non-Stonewall teams may play with a variety of different rules. We want to spend some time talking about what are the major rules here at the tournament. Our matches will range from 20 minutes to 40 minutes. On day 1, all games will be 20 minutes. On day 2, the timeline will vary based off of the progression of the actual double elimination tournament. Refs will announce at the last 2 minutes of the game when the game will be concluding. So after the last 2 minutes, no additional games can be played, and there will be an announcement so teams have a very good idea of when the games are winding down. Each team will have 8 players, but may have up to 10 on their roster. If they have additional players on their roster, those players are considered subs, and they may use up to 2 subs. They may rotate those players in at the beginning of the next games. Remember, subs must play the very next game after sitting out. Subs may not enter a game midway through a game. So if a player is injured in a game, they can't replace a player with a sub in the middle of a game. It's important to note that our captains have several responsibilities. One is to do Rochambeau at the beginning of each match. The winner of the Rochambeau will either determine if they want ball control or they'll pick the side in which players are on. We're going to come back to determining sides and when you switch sides, and we want to note that that rule might change when we get on site when we analyze the courts. Another piece is that the captain is who you would speak to if you are concerned about the way a ref is making a call, or if you're concerned about the way an opposing player is playing. So if you feel like a player is cheating, you want to be able to use your captain to relay that information to one of the refs or the head ref in order to kind of seek rectification or point out existing behavior. We want to encourage players to be good sports throughout the entire course of the tournament. So if you feel that you're hit, or if you're accused of being hit and you feel like it might be a matter of doubt, please remove yourself from the court and be a good sport about it. We have several games to play, and we're probably not talking about a situation in which the game is probably going to be determined on that specific call. At the start of every game, players will touch the back wall or the back of the court in general. When you come to the facility, those spaces will be a little bit more obvious to you. The court is split in half with a net, so you might be touching the back of the net. Let's talk about live balls and dead balls. A ball is considered live as soon as it is thrown from behind the attack line. A ball becomes dead when it does any of the following: when it touches the floor, wall, ceiling, net, or any other part of the building. It also becomes dead if it touches another ball that is not being held by a live player. It touches a player who is already out or a non-player. The ball becomes dead when it is caught, or if it comes back across the center line after hitting the back of the wall. So those are just a few examples of when the ball is dead. A player isn't technically out at the moment they are hit. Rather, they become out when the ball becomes dead. That's pretty critical. So if a player gets hit by a ball and then they catch the next ball, that catch counts and they're out as soon as that ball touches as soon as the first ball touches the floor. There is a clarification in the rules about what are considered traps, and traps are when a ball touches the floor and a player at the same time. It's generally ruled that the player is safe at that time. The attack line. So I want to pause here and say that the rules related to the attack line at the boundaries are currently going to be enforced as is. But after we set up the courts, we might make an announcement changing up some of those rules. The reason for that is we're actually going to measure out the distance of the court to assess whether there's appropriate space. For the time being, the attack line runs parallel to the center line. All throws must be made with both feet on or behind the attack line. So your foot may be on the attack line, but if any part of your foot crosses over the attack line, the throw is invalid and the player may be invalid. Next, we want to talk about the boundaries around the court. There'll be two lines on the sides of the court that really define the boundaries, and we'll identify those lines pretty early on for players to know. All players that are live must stay within the boundaries. If you're a player that likes to play the pocket, please note that if you're dodging a ball and any part of your body moves over a boundary line, you'll be immediately out. Now let's talk about deflections. This is a really important part of our tournament and might vary depending upon the league that you play in. So a deflection occurs when a ball bounces off of a player or a ball that a player is holding. Deflecting a ball into yourself means that you are out. Meaning if you have a ball and the ball coming in hits your ball and then hits you, you're out. This also counts if it's a headshot. So if it deflects from your ball into your head, you are considered out at that point. Deflecting a ball into someone else does not result them in getting out. A thrown ball can get at most one person out. A ball that is deflected is still live, and so be careful if you throw a ball and it's deflected, there's still a possibility that another player may catch your ball. Now, if that ball touches any part of the gym before the player catches the ball, that ball is now dead. So now we want to talk about maintaining ball control during deflections. So what we're basically talking about is you want to be able to maintain ball control if you have a ball in your hand. So if you have a ball and a ball comes towards you and hits your existing ball out of your hand, you're considered out because you weren't able to maintain ball control. This also is a little tricky when it comes to catches. If you've caught a ball and then there's an immediate second ball coming towards you or third, and you drop one of the balls that you're currently holding from a previous catch, you're out at that time. We really want to empower all of our referees. So we've asked all of our referees this year to take a quiz. This quiz allows us to assess how comfortable and knowledgeable they are with our rules overall. Please note that every captain was required to take the quiz. We're actually going to be posting the results of those quiz on Friday to all captains, so we show confidence in the rules that players are familiar with and not familiar with, and we'll highlight those that have a lower passing rate. When I say highlight, not the players who have a lower passing rate, but the rules that have a lower passing rate. All referee calls will be final, so please don't argue with them. Our community is about the love of dodgeball, and this tone that we set is very important. So we want to empower our refs to make final calls, and we want players that have issues to use their appropriate channels to resolve issues. So if you have an issue, feel free to reach out to your captains. The captains will work with the refs and the head refs, and if needed, both Joe and I will be on site in order to make any other additional determinations if those resources aren't able to make a call. Please note that if you suspect a player of cheating, that you want to notify the referee so the referee can A, notify the player that they'll be watched a little bit more closely, and most importantly, bring attention to the referee to watch that specific player. Now, there are situations in which players won't be as familiar with the rules. There's an opportunity for us to educate them about the rules at this tournament live as they're playing as well. Remember, there is an opportunity for folks to call a timeout. A timeout can last no more than 30 seconds, and you only get one timeout per game. Please note that at our tournament, we will have penalty cards. So we will issue yellow cards and red cards. And please feel free to read the rules to determine the differences between those two cards and when those cards can be given out by a ref. Now let's talk about ball control. We are going to be playing with 5 balls. Let me repeat that. We are going to be playing the tournament with only 5 balls. The reason why that is that we're only having 8 players on the court. 5 balls will give us the opportunity to move the games along on a pretty quickly, but most importantly, will also create levels of fairness. So please know at the Dodgeball tournament this summer, we're only playing with 5 balls. Your team has ball control when you have 3+ balls on your side of the court. The team that has majority ball control, the countdown will start at 15 in the referee's mind, and then there'll be a verbal countdown after 5 seconds passes, starting at 10. So again, ball control is 15 seconds, and the countdown begins starting at 10. Failure to give up ball control means that all balls will move from one team to the opposing team. The ref will blow the whistle, balls will be transferred over. The ref will blow the whistle again in order for the game to start up all over again. Placing balls just over the center line doesn't count as giving up control of the balls. This is something that we sometimes see players do as a strategy. So note that when you have to give up ball control, you're actually either rolling or throwing balls across the center line to the other team. Ball control for single players runs a little bit differently. So I encourage you to specifically look into the rules at the ball control for single players. I want to summarize it really quickly for you. When a team is down to 1 player and that player has ball control, the timer resets to 10 seconds each time the player throws until they lose ball control. So basically, if I have 5 balls in my hand on my side of the court, the ref will call ball control and count starting at 10 to 0. I have until 0 to release the ball. And then if I have 4 balls, he continues to count 10 through 0 again until I get to a point in which I have less than 3 balls. Now let's talk about headshots. Shots directly to the head do not result in an out, except if you're on the ground as defined with 3 points of contact with the floor, then headshots count. So let me repeat that and clarify that. So a lot of times players will crouch down to the ground. If 3 points of their body are touching the ground and they're hit in the head, that headshot does count. So what's 3 points of contact? Examples might be your 2 feet and a knee. Or what's common with a lot of players is they might actually be holding a ball in their hand and using it kind of as a tripod. So they'll have 2 feet or a foot and a knee and the ball as a tool to balance themselves. That ball does count, even though your hand might not technically be touching the ground. That's considered 3 points of contact. And if you're hitting the head at that point, you are considered out. The outer lines. Again, the court has boundaries. And if you at any point cross over those boundaries or the outer line, you are considered out. At the same time, players come in from those outer lines. So be cognizant of that. We're going to clarify a little bit of the outer lines when we arrive on court and establish them so that people know where to exit and enter the court and where to queue up in order to return back to the game if a ball is caught. One note that I didn't cover earlier that I want to pause and mention here is that as you are considered out, you'll line up from the back of the court towards the referee or towards the center of the court. The reason why that order is important is that is the order in which you will return into the court if a ball is caught. So that's pretty critical and highlighted in our rules. If you have questions related to that, feel free to ask. Shagging. The ball must be properly returned to a player. Players cannot reach into the court or over the court into the other team's outlined area for any reasons. So basically, when you're shagging balls to players, you want them to exit the court into your area or exit the court outside of the boundaries of the court, in which you can retrieve a ball and either roll it back in for a player to then receive. What's very important, and we're very particular about this in our tournament, and several of the refs in DC are very particular about this, is that you can't reach in to the court to assist a ball to move back to a player. So please wait for the ball to fully come out of the court in order to be able to help shag a ball to a player that's currently in. Again, teams may utilize one timeout per match, and those timeouts may be up to 30 seconds long. So now let's talk about tiebreakers for our tournament. So on day one, ties are permitted. You might end a match where it's 5-5. On day two, it becomes a little bit more difficult to end a game in a tie because we are in a double elimination tournament. So on day two, ties will be broken with one additional game. Now, what makes our tournament particularly interesting this year is that during a tiebreaker game, after 3 minutes, no deflections will be permitted. I want to take a minute and explain what that is. So for the first 3 minutes, you can hold a ball and deflect balls that are coming towards you. But after 3 minutes, the ref will notify all players that deflections are no longer allowed, which means if a ball's coming at you, you have to dodge it or you have to catch it. This helps us speed up the game, and this will be something really new that we're going to try at our tournament that's pretty regular at some other tournaments. Now, we are implementing the slaughter rule at the tournament. So what that means is if there's a point differential at any match that reaches 10 points, the match is declared a victory for the leading team and the score will be recorded as is and the match is over. The reason why we want to do this is we want to make sure that we don't have a lot of player fatigue that occurs throughout the course of either day. So if a team is up by 10 points, the match is immediately over and the score is recorded as is. Player conduct. So we are using a very new gym and we want to make a really great impression so that way we can use this gym either in DC again or for future tournaments. So we're asking all players for your help. So if there are opportunities for us to pick up after ourselves and to be nice to the staff and students at Georgetown University's Law Center, please do so. We also ask that we not use any profanity on campus and that we're constantly aware of the conversations we're having and the people around us. We're going to have a lot of fun at the summer tournament. There'll be after hours activities and there'll be fun stories to share about those after hours activities. But we want to be aware of the folks that are around us as those conversations reflect us, as also it reflects the Stonewall Dodgeball organization as a whole. We also want those to be very aware that we have a zero tolerance policy when it comes to discrimination at Stonewall Sports. So if there are any discriminatory comments that are made towards another player, towards a ref, towards anybody that's in relations to the tournament, tournament leadership has the ability to immediately eject a player from the game. For the most part, we don't want to be handling any of these challenges, and we don't actually think we will be. We expect all of our players to really enjoy the experience, enjoy dodgeball, and enjoy the community that we are building. We want to cover a few things about safety. So we encourage players that are injured at any point throughout the game to give themselves a break. You have up to 2 minutes to kind of recoup or pull yourself together in order to determine whether it's appropriate for you to come back into the game. Now, if the game ends while you're in your 2-minute break, that is what it is. But we don't want players to come back to a game injured. So if you do feel that you're injured, please sit out during that game in order to give your body the ability to recover. Now, if a player is injured for the duration of the tournament, the team unfortunately can't find a sub. They'll just have to play a player down if they are below 8 players. Now let's talk about one other thing that a lot of people have asked us about, which are gloves and tape. This varies by tournament. At the Stonewall Dodgeball tournament, we do allow players to wear gloves and tape. We ask that players be aware of the gloves that they're selecting and be aware not to use gloves that have an adhesive bottom. So you don't want to be basically a piece of tape retrieving balls. You want to use the gloves mainly for safety or athletic reasons, not as a tool to gain an advantage. There's no pinching at our tournament. So when you're throwing, be sure that the two pieces of rubber in your hand are not connecting before you're releasing the ball. If you are caught pinching, there are consequences for that may result in a yellow or red card. If you are going to record a game, which is very common in tournament play, please ask the other captain to check in with their team to ensure that they're comfortable being recorded. Now, the Stonewall Sports Association had all players sign a waiver saying that if we take footage, that we may use that footage. If you're uncomfortable with that happening, please either notify one of the tournament leads or feel free to step out of the frame of the shot that's being taken. If you can't because it's during a game, please let us know so that way we can move maybe the way that shot is being taken. The last thing is about tournament shirts. At the dodgeball tournament, unlike the kickball tournament or the volleyball tournament, we actually are not providing a shirt per se. We're providing everyone a fun cool down tank top, which captains will be given at registration at the opening party. Players may use that shirt if they wish to play at the tournament. So if you haven't brought a tournament or if you haven't bought a uniform or your team, something happens to your uniform, feel free to utilize that shirt. That being said, we do request that all players, and when I say request, I mean require, that all players have a visible number on their uniform. If your uniform design right now doesn't have a spot for a number, don't worry. I've ordered plenty of stickers that you can simply use a Sharpie in order to mark a number and keep on your shirt. We'll have a lot of them on the hospitality table on site. So if a sticker falls off, know that there's a place for you to retrieve and get another sticker. In the rule book, it says the stickers should be 1 through 10. We are actually going to expand that to 1 to 99. So if your favorite number is 21, go for it. We ask that players just not use fractions or decimal points. Those are the overall rules that we have for the tournament. I want to throw it over to my co-lead, Joe Peltzer from Philly, to see if there are any additional pieces that I haven't covered tonight that he would like to cover. Joe, you got anything?
No, I actually think you covered everything pretty clear. Just to reiterate that if there are any issues on day of and when we're in the middle of a game, don't argue with the refs, but rather make sure that you are communicating with your captain, and then we can make sure that we address those issues moving forward.
Awesome. Awesome. I have music going on, and there's a reason for that music. So I want to share with you real quick, share screen. So for the tournament, we love playing with music. So we've created a Spotify playlist that we encourage players to feel free to add their favorite tunes to. This link will be provided to all captains, and captains will share it along with players. It's also in tonight's final communications email. So feel free to find this playlist on Spotify. It should be public, and add additional songs to our playlist. This will really help with the experience overall. All right, Joe, let's see if we have any questions real quick before we move out. Give me a second to find these.
I don't think we have any.
I don't think we have any either. All right, well, if you do have any questions at any point, feel free to reach out to myself or Joe. If you want to reach out to me directly, feel free to email me at melvin@stonewallsports.org. We're going to be a little crazy busy across the next 2 days because me and Joe are going to be setting up courts. We're going to be in a lot of different meetings. We're going to get back to you as soon as possible. Feel free to reach out to your captains. They pretty much at this point are experts as well because they've attended the captains meeting and been receiving a lot of emails and are part of a Facebook group that I post in every day 4 or 5 times a day. So they probably are sick of me at this point, but are very well informed. I want to thank everyone for logging on and joining us for our first ever rules clinic. We're really looking forward to having you at the 2017 tournament. This will be our biggest tournament to date, and we hope to continue to grow our community. We encourage all players to be great sports, meet new people, and come join us off the court for some of our dedicated socials. Again, thanks all for joining us.
Hey,
And
Melvin.
that wraps up our rules clinic.
Hey, Melvin.